You ever notice how like the most fascinating conversations can kind of come out of nowhere, you know, like in the most unexpected places? We're going to dive into a classic debate today, village life versus city life. And get this, our source is a YouTube video for people learning English.
Huh. Interesting.
It's a language lesson, but it's got this whole conversation about the pros and cons of each lifestyle.
It's kind of remarkable, though, isn't it? How, like, these really universal, like, big questions, they just find their way into, like, even the simplest things. I think it says something about, you know, how deep this debate is in our minds, like, as humans, you know.
Absolutely. It's like they accidentally opened a window into this huge EE topic while they were just trying to, like, teach some vocabulary or something. So yeah, get ready, because we're about to like really dig into all the nuances of village versus city life as they're laid out in this video. And who knows what we'll find.
I'm ready. Let's do it. I always find it fascinating to see how different cultures and places throughout history have wrestled with this very question, you know, village or city.
Okay, so the video, right, it's got these two people and they're going back and forth about the good and bad of each lifestyle. And they even use the terms pros and cons, which I thought was funny. But they hit on all those classic arguments for village life. The peace and quiet, being closer to nature, that whole tight-knit community thing. They even say something like, people in villages, they tend to support each other when times get tough.
Yeah, that really lines up with a lot of the research in sociology. Have you ever heard of Dunbar's number?
I don't think so.
So it's this idea that humans can only, like, really maintain meaningful relationships with about 150 people at a time, max.
Oh, interesting.
Makes you wonder if maybe, you know, village life with its smaller groups, if it kind of taps into that.
Oh, I see what you mean.
More basic need for connection. And maybe that contributes to that whole support system aspect.
That's a really cool point. So it's not just about like knowing your neighbors. It's more about how you're part of a social structure that's like built for deeper connection from the start. But what about like the city side of this debate?
Well, in the video, they highlight the typical draws of city life, right?
Yeah.
More opportunities for education, for jobs, and of course, all the entertainment you could ever want. Mm-hmm. They do admit there are downsides, though.
Yeah, like what?
Like all the crowds, the pollution, that sort of thing. But they also make this interesting point. They say that people in cities tend to be more independent, you know, more self-reliant.
Independence. That's interesting. Is that like a real personality trait that draws people to cities in the first place? Or is it something the city like forces you to develop over time? Like you got to adapt to survive or something?
That's such a classic question. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg, you know? It could be that, yeah, the anonymity of the city, the fact that people are coming and going all the time, that kind of pushes you to rely more on yourself. You might not have that same like automatic support system you'd have in a smaller community. But then again, maybe people who already value that independence, maybe they're the ones who are drawn to the city in the first place. Places where that trait is, like, needed and appreciated, you know?
Wow, yeah. Makes you think how where we live can shape not just how we act, but maybe even our values over time.
Right.
So in the end, like, what did these people in the video say? Who wins, the village or the city?
Well, funny enough, they didn't actually declare a winner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think that shows just how complex this issue is. They basically said the best choice depends on each person's priorities and lifestyle. And even went as far to say it's really up to the person to decide what suits them best.
It's like that whole thing of finding what fits you best.
Exactly.
Like trying to jam a square peg into a round hole just doesn't work. You got to find the environment that matches your needs, your goals, you know?
Exactly. And this idea of finding that fit, it goes deeper than just, you know, practical stuff. It gets into like psychology and well-being and all that.
Yeah.
Some people, they just thrive in the chaos and energy of the city. All the stimulation, the possibilities, that's what keeps them going. But other people, they feel totally suffocated in that environment. And it's the opposite for other people who need that peace and quiet. Some people find their purpose in the countryside, while others might feel isolated or like they're stuck, you know?
I totally get that. When I first moved to the city, it was so exciting, all the energy, all the things to do. But after a while, I started to miss having some space, some quiet. And it made me think about that balance that they talked about in the video.
Yeah.
That idea of getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah. The eternal quest for balance.
Yeah.
Classic human dilemma, wanting it all.
Exactly. And the video even says that it's always good to have a balance between the two if possible. But like, how do you even do that? Is that even possible? Especially in a world that feels so like divided?
That's the million-dollar question right there. And it might not even be about living in a village or a city. Maybe it's about understanding what each one represents, what they offer, and then finding ways to bring those things into your life no matter where you live.
So it's not about picking one or the other, really. It's about like finding ways to get those good village vibes and those good city vibes no matter where you actually are, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember those phrases they used? Peaceful and closer to nature for the village, and then fast-paced and dynamic for the city. It's like, those are little summaries of whole ways of life, you know? And maybe, just maybe, the trick is to figure out how to mix those ways of life together.
Yeah.
Like, build yourself a life that gives you a bit of both.
I love that, building your own little ecosystem.
Your personal ecosystem.
Yeah, it's like we're all little gardeners or something.
Right.
But okay, let's like zoom out for a second here. Why does any of this even matter? Like, what's the big deal about this whole village versus city debate?
Well, if nothing else, it's a good excuse to think about yourself, you know,
Yeah.
of what really matters to you. Where do you feel most at home? Where do you feel like most alive, most like yourself?
Yeah.
It forces you to look at like all those ideas you have about what a good life is supposed to be and whether those ideas actually fit what you really need. You know what I mean?
Totally. So it's not about just picking a place to live.
No.
It's about building a whole life that feels right, that feels true to who you are.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just us as individuals too, you know? Like thinking about these different lifestyles.
Yeah.
It helps us all understand each other better. Be more, what's the word, empathetic. It helps us have better conversations about things like how we design our cities, about building stronger communities, even about how we protect the environment. Because let's face it, how we choose to live has a big impact on all those things.
It's all connected.
Right, exactly.
Well, you know, it's funny. This is making me think about that balance idea again. Like, remember how in the video they said, it's always good to have a balance between the two if possible. But how do we actually get that balance? Especially when it feels like the world is so like black and white these days.
You know, I think we already see people trying to do this, trying to find that balance in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, like how...
Think about like the people who live in the city, but then they escape to their cabin in the woods every weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Or those small towns, those rural communities that are like embracing new technology, starting up art scenes and stuff.
Like they're instinctively trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Get the best of both worlds without having to pick just one.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot we can learn from those efforts. Like maybe we need to rethink how we build our cities. Add more green spaces, more places for people to just bump into each other and connect.
Oh, yeah. Like those chance encounters you get in a village. That would be so cool.
And on the other side, maybe we need to find better ways to empower small towns and rural areas so they can thrive too. Give them the resources they need so they don't feel left out.
Yeah. It's not about making some perfect utopia where everyone lives in harmony or something.
Right.
It's more about seeing the value in both ways of life.
Right.
And finding ways to combine those strings.
Exactly. We can learn from how close-knit villages are and use those ideas to build stronger communities, even within big cities. And we can support rural areas by making sure they have the opportunities they need to grow and flourish. You know, it's funny, this whole conversation, this whole deep dive, it all started with this little English lesson video.
I know, it's wild. It really shows you that the most interesting ideas can come from the most random places.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it reminds us to be curious, to be open to different ways of looking at things, and to remember that even things that seem simple on the surface can actually be really complex and full of meaning.
So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for all our listeners out there?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is a question. A question for you and for everyone listening today. If you could design like the perfect place to live, how would you do it? What would you take from village life? What would you take from city life?
Oh, wow. That's a big one. It's like, you're asking me to create my dream world or something.
Yeah, kind of. If you could start from scratch, build a community that's like the best of both worlds, what would it look like? How would you bring those village and city vibes together?
That's tough. I mean, you want that feeling of knowing your neighbors, right? Like you're part of something.
Yeah.
But you also want all the cool stuff the city has to offer, the energy, the diversity, all that.
So how do you make it work?
I guess. I mean, you'd need places where people can connect easily,
Yeah.
like maybe those little parks and squares you see in Europe,
Oh, I love those.
where people just hang out, chat, get to know each other.
Yeah, yeah. Those are great.
And tons of local businesses, like little shops and cafes,
What?
places that give the community its own unique flavor.
It's like, that's the heart of a village, right?
Totally. But then at the same time, you'd want access to like amazing art and music and food from all over the world.
Of course. Of
What?
course. And don't forget about opportunities, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like jobs and education.
Exactly. People need to be able to grow and reach their full potential.
Okay, so it's like this ideal mix, right? But is it even possible? Like, wouldn't those village and city parts like clash?
I don't know. Maybe it's about like finding clever solutions.
Yeah.
You know, thinking outside the box. Like, what if we had co-working spaces that were also like surrounded by gardens?
Ooh, I like
Or
that.
rooftop farms that grew food for the restaurants in the neighborhood.
That'd be so cool.
Or even using like high-speed internet to connect rural communities to all the resources and opportunities of the city.
Yeah, it's like you're taking the best parts of each and weaving them together.
Exactly. And it's not just about like buildings and stuff either.
Yeah.
It's about a way of thinking, you know, a community where people can be themselves, chase their dreams, but also feel connected, like they belong, like they're part of something bigger.
This whole conversation has been really eye-opening, I gotta say. It's like I always thought it was one or the other,
Yeah.
village or city. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way.
Maybe not. Maybe we can have the best of both worlds
Yeah.
if we're willing to think differently.
Exactly. Well, that's a great note to end on, I think. And who knows, maybe this little English lesson will inspire some of our listeners to think about their own communities in new ways.
Yeah. Maybe they'll start seeing those opportunities to create something really special.
I hope so. It's been an amazing deep dive exploring this age-old debate, wouldn't you say?
It really has.
Yeah.
And it all started with that random YouTube video.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. And until next time, keep those questions coming.
Keep exploring, keep learning. See you next time.